Victoria Hayes had always been invisible in the best possible way. At 27, she moved through the marble halls of Pierce Industries like a ghost who got things done. Her desk sat outside the corner office on the 42nd floor, where Manhattan stretched endlessly below like a kingdom of glass and steel. For 4 years, she had been Jonathan Pierce's executive assistant, organizing his life with quiet precision while he built an empire. Jonathan Pierce was everything the business magazines said he was. Brilliant, ruthless, magnetic. At 35, he had transformed his father's modest construction company into a billion-dollar real estate empire. His face graced the covers of Fortune and Forbes. His engagement to Senator Patricia Whitmore's daughter had made headlines in the society pages. He was untouchable, or so everyone thought. The annual charity gala changed everything. It was December, and the company's downtown headquarters had been transformed into a winter wonderland. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow reflections across the marble floors. The city's elite mingled over champagne and caviar, writing checks for children's hospitals while discussing their next yacht purchases. Victoria stayed late, as always, ensuring every detail was perfect. She was in the empty executive lounge, gathering forgotten champagne glasses, when Jonathan appeared. His bow tie hung loose around his neck, his usually perfect hair slightly mussed. He looked younger somehow, more human than the polished businessman everyone knew. "You don't have to clean up," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "The cleaning crew will handle it." Victoria looked up, surprised. In 4 years, their conversations had been strictly professional. "I don't mind. It helps me wind down." He stepped closer, and she caught the scent of his cologne mixed with champagne. "You're always taking care of everyone else. Who takes care of you?" The question hung in the air between them. Victoria felt something shift, a crack in the professional wall they had built. She should have left then, should have made an excuse, and walked away. Instead, she found herself talking about her lonely apartment, her weekend novels, her dreams of traveling to places she had only seen in magazines. Jonathan listened with an intensity that made her feel seen for the first time in years. When he reached out to brush a strand of hair from her face, she didn't pull away. When he kissed her, soft and tentative at first, then with growing hunger, she kissed him back. They spent the night at his penthouse apartment, 20 floors above the city lights. It was tender and desperate all at once, two people finding comfort in each other's arms, while the world slept below. In the morning, reality crashed back like a cold wave. "This can't happen again," Jonathan said, already reaching for his phone, his armor sliding back into place. "I'm getting married in 6 months." Victoria nodded, understanding completely. She dressed quickly and left without another word. By Monday morning, they were back to their professional dance, as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed, even if neither of them knew it yet. 3 weeks later, Victoria's world tilted off its axis. She was in the executive bathroom, staring at 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test. When her phone buzzed with Jonathan's next meeting reminder, her hands shook as she typed back a confirmation, her mind racing with impossible calculations. She waited another week before asking for a private meeting. Jonathan agreed with his usual brisk efficiency, assuming it was about quarterly reports or travel arrangements. Victoria had rehearsed what she would say, how she would remain calm and professional. She had not expected the look of pure horror that crossed his face when she told him. "You're lying," he said, his voice flat and cold. "This is some kind of scheme." Victoria felt the floor drop away beneath her. "Jonathan, I would never. How much do you want?" He was already reaching for his checkbook, his movements sharp and angry. 50,000. 100. Name your price and disappear. "I don't want your money," Victoria said quietly. "I just thought you should know." His laugh was bitter and cruel. "Right, the innocent little secretary act. Do you think I'm stupid? You planned this whole thing, didn't you? Sleep with the boss, get pregnant, cash in." Victoria stood up slowly, her dignity the only thing she had left. "I'm keeping the baby," she said. "I don't need anything from you." Jonathan's eyes narrowed. "We'll see about that." The meeting he called the next day would haunt Victoria for years. The entire executive floor was summoned to the main conference room, 30 of the company's most senior employees. Victoria stood among them, confused about why she had been included until Jonathan walked in. His face a mask of righteous anger. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, pacing like a prosecutor before a jury, "we have a situation that requires immediate attention. Someone in this room has attempted to manipulate and extort this company through false claims." Victoria's blood turned to ice as his gaze settled on her. Victoria Hayes has made certain accusations and demands that are not only false, but represent a clear attempt at corporate manipulation. His voice carried across the room like a whip. "This company will not tolerate such behavior from anyone, regardless of their position." The room was dead silent. Victoria could feel every eye on her, could sense the mixture of shock and judgment radiating from her colleagues. People she had worked beside for years, whose birthdays she remembered, whose families she asked about, now looked at her like a stranger. Effective immediately, Miss Hayes is terminated for cause. Security will escort her from the building. Jonathan's voice never wavered, never showed a crack of uncertainty. "Let this be a lesson to anyone who thinks they can take advantage of Pierce Industries' success." Victoria wanted to speak, to defend herself, to tell her side of the story, but what was the point? Who would believe her word against his? She walked out of that conference room with her head high, even as her heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. Her desk had already been cleaned out, her personal items packed into a cardboard box by someone in human resources. The photo of her mother, her coffee mug with the faded sunflower design, her small cactus plant that had somehow survived 4 years of office fluorescent lighting, all of it reduced to objects in a box. As the elevator doors closed on the 42nd floor for the last time, Victoria caught a glimpse of her reflection in the polished steel. She looked pale and fragile, like a woman who had just lost everything. But beneath the shock and pain, something else flickered in her eyes. Not anger, not bitterness, but determination. She was carrying a child now, Jonathan's child, though he would never acknowledge it. This baby would grow up knowing that its father was a man who chose his reputation over responsibility, his image over integrity. But this child would also know what it meant to have a mother who refused to be broken, who could build something beautiful from the ruins of betrayal. Victoria placed her hand over her still flat stomach as the elevator descended toward the ground floor. She had fallen from grace, been cast out of paradise by a man who saw her as nothing more than a threat to his carefully constructed life. But falls, she realized, could also be flights. Sometimes you had to lose everything to discover what you were truly capable of building. The lobby doors opened onto the busy Manhattan street, and Victoria Hayes stepped out into her new life, carrying nothing but a cardboard box and the growing certainty that this was not an ending, but a beginning. Here is part 2, Rising from Ashes as a Standalone Story. The Executive's Second Chance, Part 2, Rising from Ashes. 2 years had passed since. Victoria Hayes walked out of Pierce Industries with nothing but a cardboard box and shattered dreams. Now she stood in a cramped one-bedroom apartment in Queens, watching her 18-month-old daughter Emma take her first wobbly steps across the worn carpet. The little girl had Jonathan's dark eyes and stubborn chin, but Victoria's gentle smile and determined spirit. "Come on, sweetheart," Victoria encouraged, holding out her arms. "You can do it," Emma toddled forward, her chubby hands reaching for her mother's embrace. Victoria caught her daughter and spun her around, both of them laughing. These moments of pure joy kept Victoria going through the exhaustion and uncertainty of single motherhood. The apartment was tiny but clean. Victoria had painted the walls a cheerful yellow and hung Emma's artwork on the refrigerator. A second-hand laptop sat on the kitchen table, surrounded by notebooks filled with code and business plans. This was Victoria's new office, her command center for the empire she was building, one line of code at a time. After losing her job, Victoria had struggled for months to find work. Her reputation had been destroyed by Jonathan's public humiliation. Former colleagues wouldn't return her calls. Job interviews ended abruptly when potential employers recognized her name. She had been blacklisted from the corporate world she had once navigated with such confidence. But Victoria had always been resourceful. While Emma napped, she taught herself advanced programming languages online. She studied business development through free courses and library books. She networked with other working mothers in coffee shops and playgroups. Slowly, an idea began to form. Victoria noticed that many single mothers like herself struggled with managing finances on irregular incomes. They needed budgeting tools that understood their reality: childcare costs, medical bills, unpredictable work schedules. The existing financial apps were designed by men in suits for people with steady salaries and predictable expenses. They didn't understand that sometimes you had to choose between groceries and gas money. What if I could fix that? Victoria wondered aloud one evening as she rocked Emma to sleep. She began developing a financial app called Real Money, designed specifically for women managing households on tight budgets. The app included features like childcare calculators, emergency fund builders, and flexible budgeting tools that adapted to irregular income. Most importantly, it spoke to users in simple, encouraging language instead of intimidating financial jargon. Victoria spent her days caring for Emma and her nights coding. She survived on 3 hours of sleep, coffee, and determination. When Emma was teething and cried through the night, Victoria worked with her daughter on her hip, typing one-handed while bouncing and shushing her savings account. Never robust to begin with, dwindled to double digits. Victoria took on freelance web design projects to pay rent, often delivering work while Emma played in shopping carts at the grocery store, using the free Wi-Fi. She sold her car and relied on public transportation. She bought generic diapers and learned to make meals from whatever was on sale. But Victoria never gave up on her vision. She beta tested Real Money with other single mothers in her building, incorporating their feedback and suggestions. She applied for small business grants designed for women entrepreneurs. She pitched her idea at startup competitions, often the only presenter with a baby strapped to her chest. The breakthrough came on a rainy Tuesday morning. Victoria was feeding Emma breakfast when her phone rang with a number she didn't recognize. Ms. Hayes? This is Jennifer Chen from Summit Capital. We reviewed your application for our Women-Led Startup Accelerator program. Victoria's heart stopped beating. We'd like to offer you a spot in our next cohort, along with $50,000 in seed funding. Victoria sank into her kitchen chair, Emma babbling happily in her high chair. $50,000. It wasn't just money, it was validation, opportunity, a chance to prove that her idea had merit. Ms. Hayes, are you there? Yes, Victoria whispered, then cleared her throat. Yes, I'm here. I accept. The accelerator program was intense. Victoria moved to San Francisco with Emma, living in a tiny studio apartment near the program's headquarters. She worked 18-hour days, refining her product, building partnerships, learning from successful entrepreneurs who had walked this path before her. Emma charmed everyone at the accelerator. She attended meetings in her portable Playard, gurgling happily while her mother pitched to investors. The other entrepreneurs, mostly young men, fresh out of college, were amazed by Victoria's ability to manage motherhood and entrepreneurship simultaneously. How do you do it all? Asked David, a 22-year-old developing a gaming app. Victoria looked up from her laptop, where she was debugging code while Emma napped in her lap. You do what you have to do, she said simply. When you're responsible for someone else's future, failure isn't an option. Real Money launched 6 months later to immediate success. Victoria's app struck a chord with women across the country who had been ignored by traditional financial services. Downloads soared. User reviews were glowing. Financial publications wrote articles about the app's innovative approach to household. Budgeting.Victoria hired her first employees to other working mothers who understood her vision. She moved to a larger apartment with a dedicated office space. She could finally afford quality childcare for Emma, though she still brought her daughter to work most days. Emma had become the unofficial mascot of Real Money, inspiring the company's family-friendly policies. Meanwhile, across the country, Jonathan Pierce's empire was crumbling. Victoria learned about his troubles through industry newsletters and business publications. Pierce Industries had been hit with multiple lawsuits from former employees alleging workplace harassment. His engagement to Senator Whitmore's daughter had ended in scandal. Several major development projects had fallen through due to cost. Overruns and permit problems. Victoria felt no satisfaction in his struggles. She had moved beyond anger and bitterness, focused entirely on building her own success. But she couldn't help wondering if Jonathan ever thought about the daughter he had rejected, the woman whose life he had tried to destroy. On Emma's second birthday, Victoria threw a party in their new two-bedroom apartment. The walls were decorated with balloons and streamers. Other single mothers from the neighborhood came with their children. Cake was served on paper plates. But the joy was genuine and abundant. As Victoria watched her daughter blow out her candles with help from her friends, she marveled at how much had changed. 2 years ago, she had been broken and desperate, believing her life was over. Now she was the CEO of a thriving company, a successful entrepreneur, a devoted mother raising a happy, confident little girl. Emma looked up at her with those dark eyes so much like her father's, but filled with pure love and trust. "Mama," she said, reaching for Victoria's hand. "Yes, sweetheart," Victoria replied, pulling her daughter close. "Mama's here? Mama's always going to be here." Outside their apartment window, San Francisco sparkled in the evening light. Victoria's phone buzzed with notifications, new users signing up for real money, interview requests from business publications, meeting invitations from potential investors. Her calendar was packed with opportunities she couldn't have imagined during those dark months after leaving Pierce Industries. Victoria Hayes had rebuilt her life from nothing, transforming humiliation into motivation, rejection into resilience. She had proven that a woman's worth wasn't determined by a man's opinion of her. She had created something meaningful that helped other women build better lives for themselves and their families. And this, Victoria knew with quiet certainty, was only the beginning. The future stretched ahead of them, bright with possibility, and she was ready for whatever came next. 3 years after launching Real Money, Victoria Hayes stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her Manhattan office, watching the city buzz with life 40 stories below. The view reminded her of her old desk at Pierce Industries, but everything else had changed. This was her building now, her company. Her empire built on helping women achieve financial independence. At 29, Victoria had become one of the youngest female CEOs in the financial technology sector. Real Money had grown from a simple budgeting app to a comprehensive financial platform, serving over 2 million users. The company had just closed a $50 million funding round, valuing the startup at over $200 million. Victoria's face had recently graced the cover of Businessweek under the headline "The Comeback Queen." Emma, now 5 years old, was in the company daycare center down the hall, finger painting with the other children of Real Money employees. Victoria had designed the office space to be family-friendly, understanding that many of her workers were parents trying to balance career ambitions with family responsibilities. It was the kind of workplace she had once dreamed of, where being a mother wasn't seen as a liability, but as a strength. Victoria, her assistant Michelle, knocked on the door. "The car is here for the conference. Are you ready?" Victoria nodded, smoothing down her tailored black dress. Today she was delivering the keynote speech at the annual Financial Innovation Summit, a gathering of the industry's most influential leaders. The theme was disrupting traditional finance, and Victoria's story of building Real Money had made her the perfect speaker as her car wound through Manhattan traffic. Victoria reflected on how much her life had transformed. She owned a beautiful brownstone in Brooklyn where Emma had her own playroom and a backyard garden. They took vacations to places Victoria had once only dreamed about. Most importantly, Victoria had created something meaningful that helped thousands of women take control of their financial futures. The grand ballroom at the Waldorf Astoria was packed with 700 attendees. Victoria spotted familiar faces from venture capital firms, banks, and technology companies. As she was introduced, the audience erupted in applause. Victoria walked to the podium with confidence, her presentation remote steady in her hand. 5 years ago, she began, I was fired from my job while pregnant, publicly humiliated, and left with nothing but a cardboard box and a shattered reputation. The room fell silent, hanging on every word. Today, I stand before you as the CEO of a company that proves women's financial needs have been ignored for too long by this industry. Victoria clicked to her first slide, showing Real Money's growth metrics. We didn't succeed despite being founded by a single mother. We succeeded because we were founded by someone who understood our users. Real struggles. Halfway through her presentation, Victoria noticed a commotion near the back of the ballroom. Someone had entered late, causing whispered conversations among nearby attendees. Victoria continued speaking, but her peripheral vision caught a familiar figure making his way to an empty seat in the back row. Jonathan Pierce looked older, thinner than she remembered. His once pristine appearance had been replaced by a rumpled suit and tired eyes. According to industry reports, Pierce Industries was on the verge of bankruptcy. The harassment lawsuits had cost him millions in settlements. His reputation was in ruins. Victoria didn't falter in her presentation. She had spent years preparing for this moment, though she hadn't expected it to happen at a public event. She continued discussing Realmoney's impact, sharing testimonials from women who had used the app to escape abusive relationships, start their own businesses, or simply gain control of their household finances. Financial technology should empower everyone, not just the wealthy, Victoria concluded. When we design products for the most vulnerable users, we create solutions that work for everyone. The standing ovation was thunderous. After her speech, Victoria was surrounded by investors, journalists, and other entrepreneurs wanting to network. She graciously answered questions and exchanged business cards. But her attention kept drifting to the back of the room where Jonathan stood alone, clearly wanting to approach but hesitant. Finally, as the crowd thinned, he made his way over. Victoria excused herself from a conversation with a reporter and turned to face the man who had once destroyed her world. "Victoria," Jonathan said quietly. His voice was hoarse, lacking the commanding tone she remembered. "That was an incredible presentation. Thank you, Victoria," replied calmly. She felt no anger looking at him now, only a sense of closure she hadn't expected. "Could we talk privately?" Jonathan asked. "There's something I need to say." Victoria glanced at her watch. Emma would be waiting for her at the office daycare, probably covered in paint and full of stories about her day. But some conversations, she realized, were 5 years overdue. "There's a coffee shop across the street," Victoria said. 5 minutes. They sat across from each other in a small cafe, surrounded by the normal sounds of New York life. Jonathan looked down at his hands, struggling to find words. "I heard about your daughter," he began. "Emma, she's mine, isn't she?" Victoria nodded. "Yes, she has your eyes and your stubborn streak." Jonathan's face crumpled. "I've thought about her every day for 5 years. About both of you. What I did to you was unforgivable." "You're right," Victoria said simply. "It was unforgivable. But I forgave you anyway, not for your sake, but for mine. Carrying anger was holding me back from building the life Emma and I deserved. I lost everything," Jonathan whispered. "My company, my reputation, my family's respect. I thought destroying you would protect what I had built. Instead, I destroyed myself." Victoria studied his face, seeing genuine remorse where once there had been cold calculation. What you lost were things that were never really yours to begin with. Built on lies and cruelty, they were always going to crumble eventually. "I want to meet her," Jonathan said suddenly. "Emma, I want to be a father to her if you'll let me." "I know I have no right to ask, but Emma doesn't know about you," Victoria interrupted. "She's happy and secure. She doesn't wonder where her father is because she's never known a world where she needed one." Jonathan nodded, tears in his eyes. "I understand. I just wanted you to know that if she ever has questions, if she ever wants to know about her father, I'd like to be someone she could be proud of." Victoria stood up, then become someone she could be proud of. Not for her, not for me, but for yourself. It's never too late to choose who you want to be. As Victoria walked back toward her office building, she felt lighter than she had in years. The ghost that had haunted her success had finally been laid to rest. She had faced Jonathan Pierce not as the broken woman who had left his building in shame, but as the successful entrepreneur she had become. Emma was waiting in the daycare center, her painting smock covered in rainbow colors. "Mommy," she squealed, running into Victoria's arms. "Look what I made." Victoria admired her daughter's artwork. It's a wild explosion of colors that somehow captured the joy and energy of a 5-year-old's imagination. It's beautiful, sweetheart. Just like you. As they rode home together in their car, Emma chattering about her day, Victoria smiled. This was her real success, not the company valuation or magazine covers, but this bright, confident little girl who would grow up knowing she could achieve anything. Victoria Hayes had transformed from victim to victor, from secretary to CEO, from a woman defined by a man's cruelty to an entrepreneur who defined her own worth. She had built an empire that helped other women do the same, creating a legacy that would outlast any magazine article or business success. The past had been rewritten, not with revenge, but with resilience. The future stretched ahead, bright with possibility, and Victoria was ready for whatever came next.